Hey everybody, this is TUSDarryl and welcome to my first discussion video in about 5 years. Ouch. Now, in my defense, not that I need one, a lot of the discussion topics I had since the Mute Protagonist video took place on DuoQ. There, I discussed a number of topics with Dion. So there really wasn't much of a need for my discussion videos here since they were already taken care of over there. But now, I actually have something I want to pose and briefly talk about. For those of you who are new to these kinds of videos from me, they aren't really intended to be questions that are answered quickly, easily, or sometimes not even able to be answered. These videos only really serve to be a thought piece, a jumping off point for a conversation, be it starting and ending with what I said and you just take it and you're like, huh, that's pretty interesting. Or if you want, you can comment down below and be like, actually, I think this. You know, that's what these videos are for. So podcasts, except it's just me. So without further ado, let's get to today's topic. Are rockstar or celebrity developers as common as they used to be? Now, if I wanted to be direct about this, I'm just going to state in my opinion, no. But I want to get into my reasonings for that, so bear with me for a moment. Imagine this. You're chilling on the couch, you're in your bed, you're on the toilet, whatever you're doing. You're watching the Game Awards or the Summer Games Fest and a world premiere appears. You may or may not get hyped for the game itself or even the developer itself, but then you see a name. Shinji Mikami, Hideo Kojima, Todd Howard, Neil Druckmann, Amy Hennig, Suda51, Swery, Yoshi P. Now, depending on who it is, your curiosity is piqued. You want to look into the game or at least know how involved that person is. You know the beats from here. The first thing that made me consider this question was various conversations I've had with friends and coworkers, as well as the fact that aside from some names that crop up here and there these days, I don't really know of many standout creators now, like today, ones that came up in popularity from, say, 5 years ago to now, maybe a decade ago till now. The only ones I can really think of off the top of my head right at this moment are Toby Fox, Concerned Ape. I'm sure there are others that I'm thinking about that are in the back of my head and I just can't drag their name out to the front. But now I'm running into the problem where I'm picturing the developers, like the developers as in the team of developers versus someone who's like the sole provider behind an idea, a creative direction, the, glue that holds the team together. Because whether you like Todd Howard or not, he is kind of synonymous with a lot of Bethesda's IPs. I'm talking about that kind of person. Now, that could just be a me thing, and you could probably list off at least 100 new upcoming creators and individual developers that you would consider celebrity developers, and you'll just be showing that I really don't know jack. And frankly, I'd be fine with that. Go ahead, list them off down there. I want to check out their games, if that's the case. But in the mainstream, sometimes the mainstream is quite mean, but in the mainstream sense, I don't think it could be denied that celebrity devs in that sense, like the names I just mentioned, are not really as common as they used to be. Firstly, game companies are significantly larger than they used to be, at least in the AAA industry, AA game industry scale. Of course, I can't speak for every company out there because I don't know all of those companies' numbers. For every large scale company like Rockstar, Ubisoft, and the like, you can probably find some developers that are on the AAA scale that really have less than 100 people. But that depends on what you define as AAA, and I'm not going to get into that right now. During the early days of the game industry, where some of the people I've mentioned were getting their feet wet, teams within these companies often weren't very big, which means a lot of developers at the time had to wear multiple hats or have more influence on a game than you would at, say, a large AAA company today that caps out at about maybe 500 to 1,000 employees, depending on the scale. Yes, there are still very important people in those studios, but companies are so bloated, more often than not, that once again, it's hard to make heads or tails of who was specifically in charge of this thing and who was specifically in charge of that thing. What's their portfolio look like? Where else can I find their work? It's trickier to find them like that unless you really do some digging and from there just keep following them. That's why you have some developers to this day still being shouted out for games that came out, say, a decade ago because they didn't get the credit that they deserved in some cases. Not because they were intentionally gypped, at least not in my mind. I think it's more of a case of X company is so big and this person that we see in all the headlines was in charge of X, Y, and Z, so it's easy to attribute all the credit to them instead of, say, the other person who was working next to them, if that makes sense. Another reason I can think of is that there are just a lot more games being made every day and released every day than there used to be. As I mentioned earlier, you may know a significant amount of devs that you consider celebrities or consider rock stars that you'd follow from project to project. You know, those devs that have their own little fan base to themselves. And like I said earlier, there's a good chance that I might not have heard of them unless they are of a specific level of, oh, I know your name because you are literally all that Jeff Keighley talks about. And that's not to say that the people that you bring up are bad at their job or anything. They're probably phenomenal at it and deserve all the credit that they should be getting. But this could also just be a case of the circle of games that you consume don't overlap with mine. You may play more niche titles than me, or maybe you play more mainstream titles that I just have no interest in. It's kind of the same way I felt when I saw the Best Content Creator nominees at the Game Awards. I only recognized Iron Mouse, and that's because I watch a lot of VTubers these days. Other than that, I had no idea who the other people were, aside from maybe one name I might have seen in passing on occasion. I had no idea who those people were, but you might. And you might look at me like, Daryl, how could you not know who these people are? They did this, and this. And I could be like, maybe I kind of heard about that other thing you said, but I don't know the other ones. It's the same with games. With a lot of games being released day by day, it's a lot more difficult now to stand out amongst so many other developers. We all really have our own bubbles of games that we consume, and sometimes those bubbles don't overlap with other people's because there are just so many. The third reason I can think of is pretty straightforward. In fact, I think time is the most important one. Assuming some of the names that do make a splash in the industry continue to make games, be it on the AAA, AA, or indie scale, eventually these names will catch on to the general public. But I'd say time can be a lot harsher now these days when you couple it with the issues I mentioned earlier. I wouldn't really call them issues so much as just difficulties. Hurdles. I'm going to call them hurdles. It's more likely these days that some creators will have their own little dedicated fan base rather than the entirety of the game industry's attention whenever they sneeze. The fourth and final reason I can imagine why standing out as a celebrity developer or becoming one, I should say, these days can prove to be more difficult than it used to be is because on average, unless you already have that status, most gamers these days only really care about the company name or even just the game that is being made. It's easy to look at, say, the music industry and figure out or learn who are the big names to know in the music industry because people don't, well, I'm going to say on average, people don't think about what label an artist belongs to. They just say, hey, that's Bruno Mars. Hey, that's Billie Eilish. Hey, that's Hank Hill. Propane on a Ball was my favorite song of 2026. For the music industry, it's very easy to just look at the artist because people don't care about the label, generally speaking. With games, it's different. People will often look at the company and stop at the company. Oh, that's being developed by Ubisoft. Shut off. Oftentimes, people won't even go so far as to know what team within Ubisoft is working on a game. They just see the name Ubisoft and assume that, oh, they're the ones who made that last game. I didn't like that last game, therefore I'm not going to play it, without realizing that no, this team in Ubisoft that is making this game made the game you did like. But some people aren't going to even look that deep. So I can't expect people to look any deeper for individual people and creators. These days, a game company itself carries a lot more weight than who is involved unless they are already of that rockstar status. You could probably just say Neil Druckmann, and people who are fans of The Last of Us don't even need to see Naughty Dog pop up. You could probably just advertise the game with just Neil Druckmann, and it'll probably get eyes on it. So this point really is kind of just a piggyback onto my last point about time. In time, a developer who is consistently churning out good work within that company, within this game company, will eventually move up the ladder, move up the scale, and eventually, maybe, reach the celebrity status where people are like, I want to follow them wherever they go, even if it leads to them making a whole new studio. Bars. So, there you go. That's that for this discussion video. Again, it doesn't really have much of an ending, because the goal here is to just bring up a fun topic, bring up my opinions and thoughts on it, and then kind of open up the floor for anybody else who wants to comment on it, or maybe y'all want to talk about it amongst yourselves, not in the comment section. I don't know. It's also just a fun excuse for me to ramble about something that was on my mind at 3 a.m. last night. I don't think there's a real right or wrong answer here. I just like to know who IGN would put up a top 100 influential game developers article for once the old guard eventually move on, retire, or etc. Who will be the ones to replace them? Now that kind of topic will probably go into something deeper, like game companies needing to actually nurture their talent and grow them instead of just, laying them off and hiring again and then laying them off and then hiring the other ones and blah, 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 blah. But that's a topic for a different day. I'm not talking about that one right now. And before you ask, yes, there was a green X that appeared in my head. How'd you know? But as I said, if you want to weigh in with your own opinion, feel free to in the comments below. With that, I'm Daryl. That felt really weird. I'm TUSDarryl. I hope you've enjoyed your stay. I'll catch you next time. Bye.